Okay, so hello, and welcome. My name's Anja, and this is the Conscious Parenting Experience. I'm a parenting coach, and my goal for this series is to have real mums and dads, real parents out there in the world, sort of showing how they've remained conscious or their journey of being a conscious parent with whatever life has thrown at them and as life unfolds. So I'm very happy to welcome Janet, who we are online friends, and we actually got to meet in person, so that's kind of cool. We're quite rare. And Janet is an energy healer, a medium, and also a mentor. So welcome, Janet.
Thanks.
You're welcome to be here. And let's start perhaps by, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself before kids, your life pre-children. Sort of what was going on for you there?
Okay, so I grew up on Vancouver Island and then moved to just outside of Toronto when I was the summer between grade 6 and 7, which is a really, really terrible time to uproot your life and move.
Oh, little Janet.
And then I stayed in the GTA until after I graduated from university. I went to U of T. And then I went to Germany and I became a nanny for 3 little boys and learned a lot about parenting by not parenting my own children.
It's amazing, that situation, isn't it?
Yeah, you learn a lot about what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
But by being removed and having lots of objective thought about it, because they're not your children.
And you get to fully sleep, and then come back, right? So that changes a lot of how we parent.
Yeah, you get to turn off. You do your 9 to 5, and then your time is yours. So.
That's right.
So I did the nanny thing. I actually ended up being a nanny for 2.5 years. And yeah, I liked to travel. I liked adventure. I did a lot of things. I didn't have a very clear idea about what I wanted to do career-wise at that time. The things that I had sort of tried to do didn't work out. So yeah, like my number one goal in life was actually to be a mom. So the career was kind of always like, well, it's just something until I get to have children. So.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, and that's kind of what happened. I just kind of, I taught English for a while, and I did some jobs, and then got married and had babies.
There you go. And that's an interesting story in itself. That's great to share about how you, I have here, so you have 2 children, and your first was born in Indonesia and your second in Germany.
Correct. Yes.
Wow. So what can you tell us about that?
Okay, so I'm obviously from Canada, and then I went to Germany to be a nanny, and then I met the man that I married, the father of my children, also in Germany. He's from Belgium, actually, but we both happened to be in Germany at the same time, and had a mutual friend who was from Kenya. So there's about 5 countries involved in our meeting each other, but so yeah, we ended up getting married, and then his dream was to live and work all over the world, and he works for a big international corporation, so he can do that. So I was like, that's fine. I just want to have babies, so I can do that wherever. So
yeah, got me. I can have a baby.
Yeah. So we got married, and then shortly after that, we moved back to Germany for a little bit to get all the paperwork sorted and all of that kind of stuff. And then we moved to Indonesia. And it was only supposed to be for a year, and then it ended up being for 3 years. And we're just I guess I'm a little bit more relaxed in that sense. Like, I was just like, okay, well, I want to have kids, so it doesn't really matter where I am. or when I'm going to be moving. I can't plan these major life things around when I might move or where I might move to. Or, like, I wasn't going to put my life on hold just because we were sort of contract to contract.
Right.
I was like, well, we'll just do it and we'll deal with it. So then that's what happened then. So we had my son while we lived there. And then I was expecting my daughter, and then our contract ended and we moved back to Germany when I was 7 months pregnant with her.
Oh, wow.
So that was a little bit crazy. Like, we moved back, we didn't have anywhere to live, and trying to sort out the system and get into the system that late in the game was interesting. But luckily, actually, the dad of the family that I used to nanny for is a doctor, and he ran the children's clinic at the hospital he worked at. So it was good to have a little bit of help. Yeah. So that was very helpful.
Oh, awesome. Now, how did you find, just curious, in Indonesia, to be there, being a first-time mom, having a baby, what sort of did you learn or experience culturally wise?
A lot of things.
I would imagine quite different.
And a lot of things that people don't think to tell you until, ever really, until suddenly, like, there's all these things happening and you're like, what the hell? So my doctor was Indonesian, but he trained in England.
Okay.
So he was very good, and he was very well trained, and they're very good with the expat community. If there was any sort of problem during pregnancy, they would send you to Singapore to have the baby because their medical system was more advanced.
Okay.
Or go home, whatever your choice was. But and very few of the expats actually chose to stay put and have their babies in the country, but some of us do. So yeah, there was a lot of it. I didn't speak Indonesian very well at the time. I'd only been there for about 1.5 years when he was born. So it was just a lot of chaos. Like, I didn't know, once we got into the hospital and we were in labor, like, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what the nurses were saying to each other.
Wow.
So it was a little disconcerting. Like, we went to a class, a childbirth class beforehand. But again, it was all in a language we didn't understand. So we were just like, okay, we'll figure it out.
See, that must be amazing, your personality type and being pretty trusting of just like, we've got this. It'll figure out.
So there was a lot of sort of flying by the seat of our pants a lot. And then at one point, so this one thing they do in Indonesia, when you're having trouble with your labor, the nurses will come in and they'll push from here to try to help you push. And I ended up with like bruises all over me and it was painful and it doesn't help.
It doesn't make sense, right? But okay.
But that's what they did. But I had no warning that this was coming. And of course, like, there's so much going on when you're having a baby that you don't know up from down anyways. And then suddenly they come in. And later, one of my friends was like, oh, did the nurses help you push? I'm like, that's a thing. Like, you knew about that. You didn't warn me.
Wow. Okay. Oh, so interesting. And were you able to build like a support system there at all? Because then you're by yourself with a little baby in a country.
And I was by myself with a little baby. Yeah. So I had our community, the expat community in the town. We lived in a small town.
Okay.
And with a even smaller expat community. So we were all very close with each other. And most of them had kids. And there were play groups and there were all those sorts of things
lovely.
that I had. All in English. So
that's handy.
Yeah. The thing that we didn't have though is all the stuff. So Indonesia is a third world country. You could get some of it imported. Like, there was a big Toys R Us in Jakarta, but it's so ridiculously expensive.
Right.
That we didn't have all the things that most people here think are essential items. You have like a change table, or like
this crib for this newborn, and then this kind of crib when they're a bit bigger, and this kind of
and everything was hand-me-downs because you just couldn't get the things.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that was essential and was very common, we had a little rattan sort of carry basket, like a Moses basket.
Okay.
And that's what people carry their babies around in. So like things like strollers and a change table was just a waterproof pad that you put on the floor or the bed or wherever, the table, whatever. Yeah, so there was a lot of things that we just didn't have, and it was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I needed them until we moved to Germany.
I was going to say, and then what happens when suddenly you're like, oh, these beautiful things.
Well, and then I went to like a baby store, and there was an entire wall of soothers and sippy cups, and I'm like, but why? I could not wrap my head around the fact that there's an entire store devoted to baby. So I'm like, you don't need any of it.
That's right.
You'll need a soother. And later, the sippy cups I discovered were a great idea. But
yeah, but if you didn't have them, you wouldn't miss them. You would just work around that. Right?
Exactly. And I'm like, our parents didn't have all the things that and we're fine. So, and that was really eye-opening for me. Like the move from, baby number 1 to baby number 2 was not even 2 years later, but just being in a different country, the different expectations and the different, consumerism ideas about what you need when you have a baby. I'm like, you actually just need the baby and some clothes. And some
something with. Yeah, that's true. Oh, awesome. Okay, so now you're in Germany and you have 2 children.
Yes.
And how was that for you, having a newborn and a little toddler, or about to be toddler, not quite maybe even?
He was not quite 2, so it was challenging. I also lost my support network. There wasn't a big expat network where we lived. I did manage to find it. It took me a year. So when my youngest was a year old, we finally found an English-speaking play group. And I made some friends there. But, there were 3 or 4, and we were all spread all over the city. So, it was very isolating. My husband was working really long hours. So I was, doing everything on my own. And it was really hard. And I felt very, very isolated.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, because it's interesting that you didn't have relatives in Indonesia, but you were able to create a family.
Yeah.
So my ear thing popped out my ear. You were able to create that support network, which is so important when they're little. Just for your own sanity, never mind, having things to do.
Yeah. The other thing too, culturally, between Indonesia and Germany, Indonesians love children and babies. Like the world revolves around children.
Right.
And especially they like foreign children because they're novel. So much so that if I'm like grocery shopping and the baby's in the cart and I get something off the shelf, I'll turn around, the baby's gone because somebody's picked him up and taken him away to show their families.
Oh, wow. Holy.
So, which is a little disconcerting the first few times it happened. And just like people touching the baby all the time, and you're like, please don't touch. But then later, like as he got older, you go out for dinner and the waitresses take him away and play with him while you have your dinner. It's fantastic.
Yeah, especially because you would have sensed and felt that it was a really trusting, it was that sort of village raising the child idea. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
My husband's from Mexico background, and in Mexico I found the same when mine was small too, just as the love of just everybody thinking, oh my gosh, a baby, how lovely.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily get that.
Yeah.
Right?
And Germany is very much the opposite. It's very much, children are to be seen and not heard. And, strangers will yell at your child for doing typical children things.
Right, being a child.
For being a child, yeah. I remember we were on the subway tram thing. And one of the kids was about 2 and sort of crawled up on the seat. Like they have to sort of climb up and then turn around and sit down.
Yeah.
And this lady started yelling at them for putting their feet on the seats. I'm like, it was only while they were like turning around to sit down properly. And I'm like, strangers would yelled at me all the time for, for my child eating something they thought my child shouldn't eat, or for, putting their feet on the seat, or for, anything really. It's it's sort of the village raising the child, but in a completely different way.
Yes,
everybody thinks they have to say
loving and supportive.
Yes, no, there's none of that.
Oh my
so I would say, like, I loved living in Germany before I had children, but living there with small children was a completely different experience.
Yes, I can imagine. So in terms of your kids being so used to travel and your kids being really comfortable, how did you think you managed to create that? Because you kind of always felt comfortable in every situation, yet,
right.
For your kids are bigger now, to look back and sort of the good points that you've discovered, and maybe some is that you had to work a little harder on in order for it to everybody feel secure, content.
Right. Well, I think that's a lot of it, was that, as parents, we were very secure and comfortable wherever we happened to be. So then the children are just like, oh, okay, this is just a different version of normal.
Really beautiful. Well said. Yeah. I love that.
And I think, and it just gives perspective. And also as a parent, like, if we're so, it's kind of funny to say, but North America is sort of very isolated. Like, there's two countries, us and the United States, and we're essentially the same culture.
Mm-hmm.
We share TV shows, we share books, we share resources, we share the internet, everything. We're all getting the same sort of information and the same parenting information. It's very rare that somebody will read a book from the UK on parenting, even though it's the same language. Culturally, we're very isolated here. So everybody sort of thinks, well, just the way that we do it is the only way to do it. And so myself and my husband, the father of my children, we were from two different cultures. So we had that difference going on about customs and what you do, and baby things, parenting things. Yeah. We were raised very differently ourselves. But then you look around, and living in a different country is very different than just visiting as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Just because you're more in touch with the local people and how they do things. And you just learn that, they do things differently, and they're fine. Like, they, in Indonesia, for example, they start feeding their babies bananas right from day one.
Oh, interesting.
And, we're taught, food is forbidden until they're 6 months old. You should only nurse or only give formula, whatever your preference is. And then you can start very slowly introducing food first, but it has to be,
is it rice cereal or something?
Rice cereal, yeah. And they do that, and their babies are totally fine. They're perfectly healthy. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, because they grow bananas there. So that's what they have, right?
Yeah.
So, and you just learn that it's okay, and you can choose to do that or choose not to do it. And obviously you always want to consider your child's health, but there's so many things that are neither here nor there that people make sort of an absolute. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I learned by seeing different people's parentings, and then also being in an international community within Indonesia. There were moms from the UK, there were moms from different parts of Europe, there were moms from Australia, and they all do things their own way based on where they're from.
Yeah.
And you sort of learn that as long as you're doing what's good for your child, there are no hard and fast rules about what's right.
Oh, music to my ears. She's preaching to the choir. But that's so lovely, because it's also comes back to, from the conscious parenting side, this real trust of your own inner gut, that you can have all these other ideas. And maybe at some point you thought, I really love the idea of the bananas, the potassium, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, you would have those choices to say, I think I'd like to bring that one in. That one still doesn't sit well with me, so I'm actually not going, like those kind of things. And that's what it ends up being, because there's, like you say, so much information and so many cultures, like you're saying, it's still fine. Everybody's fine. It might feel completely foreign to us, but it's fine.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. Actually, that would have given, actually, I really like the idea of being able to experience all those different cultures sort of firsthand while your kids are small, would have made you even a little stronger in your gut and in your trust, because you're not just hearing about a one way of doing things.
Right.
You did need to make choices.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas sometimes we just go, oh, I don't,
this is just what you do, and then you do it.
Trained at this point, and so everybody's potty trained at this point. That kind of idea was you were able to include every part and then make a decision.
Yeah.
That's great. Awesome. And then you ended up. Another point. At this point, being a sort of being home a lot by yourself with your children, you had a support system. Were you any good at bringing in self-care? Did that happen for yourself? None. No. Yeah, the fact you laughed is a big no.
No, there was absolutely none of that.
No.
Not until the children were older.
Right.
Like when they were probably like 8, 9, kind of around that age, then I started being able to sort of take some time for myself. Actually, so when I'm trying to do math in my head now. So it's 2017, and so I think about 11 years ago, I think it was. So that would have been 2006. So my kids would have been like 5 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of got critical, where I was. We were living in Oregon at this point,
mm-hmm.
And I hadn't done anything for myself in 8 years, and it got pretty bad. And I was like, listen, I need to do something for myself. And so my husband agreed. He's like, yes, like go on a vacation. The kids are old enough now that, they can tell him when they're hungry.
Yeah. And Mummy felt like you could step back a minute. They'll live. You'll come home to 2 alive children.
Yes. So we decided that I would go on vacation for a week. And as it turned out, I had a friend who was living in Japan at the time. And we hadn't accrued enough frequent flyer miles that I could fly there for free. So I ended up going to Japan for a week.
Now that's some kind of self-care. Bit different to getting a pedicure or a massage.
Yes, yeah. Well, it was sort of extreme measures were required.
Yes, I love it.
Because we could do it all for free, like it just sort of opened up more possibilities. So the friend I went to go see, we'd been friends for a long time, and he was going to be working for most of the time that I was there, so it was a lot of alone time. So, which was also like crazy and totally foreign concept to me at that point. So it actually ended up being, I called it the shrine and temple tour of Japan, because for some reason, that's all I wanted to do was visit shrines and temples. And I guess because they're so quiet and calming and peaceful.
Yeah.
And a couple of gardens thrown in there, and every once in a while we'd do something, or I would do something because it was, in the tour book, but then I'd get there and I'd be like, yeah, no, this is not, I don't want a shopping street right now. Like, I want to go back to that shrine I just left. And so a lot of reflection, and that was sort of my biggest aha from that trip was like, I need to start carving out time for myself. Like, I can't keep doing this. So I made a list of like 10 resolutions.
Oh, good.
And came home, and I was like, sat down with my husband and said, so listen,
Here's some new rules, buddy.
Yeah, like things need to change. And so I did. I started doing more things for myself, and taking dance lessons again, and it was still not perfect,
Right.
But it's a learning thing, and still now, 11 years later, I'm still working on it and doing more and more for
Yeah.
myself. But yeah,
Well, that's
it's
great.
so hard when the children are little.
It is, because a lot of it too, we don't feel secure enough that they'll actually be fine without us, which is really the opposite. I was totally there. It took me a long time, even to get my hair cut. I would always be like, well, why don't I bring them? Crazy lady.
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, at least then I know everybody's good, everybody's all right.
Yeah. So
what
yeah.
would be
So if it sounds like we're preaching that, it's because we, from experience, don't wait until you reach critical levels before you do something,
Yeah, because the top up is then just still, it only touches the surface. So it is a bigger deal. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like right, from the beginning. And I think it's, as mums, we really think, oh, that's so selfish. But you need to be, in order to show up how you want to show up, and not be the really grumpy, impatient mum that we all are at times. We need to find those ways to still be Anja, still be Janet, and be a mum. Right?
Absolutely.
As opposed to the mum is it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we're wise. We're very wise. So, in closing, what do you think would be your big, I think you've uncovered lots there, but your big takeaway that maybe you would like other parents who are going through, maybe the traveling parent, maybe the parent who is in different countries with their life, or just mums in general? What would you think would be the one big wise lesson?
I think for everybody, for parents, but even just for people in general, is perspective. Like, remember that there are lots of people doing things in lots of different ways, and they're all viable options, relatively.
Yeah.
All the safe ones are viable options. But yeah, just keeping an open mind and not being afraid to try something that is different. And like we were saying earlier, really tune into your soul. And if you feel that it's right for your child, then it's right for your child. And it doesn't matter what the parenting books say or whatever. Maybe you're tapping into something that they do in Finland and that's common practice over there. You just don't know that it is. There are just so many options, and as long as you're doing what's right for yourself and your children, that's really all that matters. And when you're secure in your parenting, your children are secure in their lives. Right? And then they can go forward and do amazing, awesome things.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's a really good one. Perspective. That is a really such an important one too, because even the perspective of, I just thought of like the stages. So when life is hard at times, you've got a toddler who's saying no to everything, and is all over the place, for example, or a teen. So there too, and having the perspective that this is actually normal, this is okay, this is the stage, this is what's going on, and still being secure enough to be you in that situation. So I love that perspective. Is great.
Yeah, that actually just reminds me. So when my son was a baby and we were visiting the family that I nannied for, and the father is, as I said, is a pediatrician. He's also a child psychiatrist. And the baby was crying, and new mom is going, oh, the baby's crying. And he's like, chill out, man. He's like, this is how babies communicate. And he says, just like grown-ups, babies are people. They're not going to be in a good mood 100% of the time. Oh. Sometimes they get upset. Sometimes it's not for, any particular reasons, not because they're hungry or they need their diaper changed or they're hot or they're cold, like a physical reason. Sometimes they're just grumpy and cranky and tired. And it's okay. And it's okay to let babies cry because they're expressing themselves. And I was just like, what?
Yes. Oh, that would be, and especially from somebody who you've been around and so totally trust. That's fabulous advice. That is really excellent.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you have to use your judgment. When they're crying all the time, is not good. That's an indicator that something is wrong. But he's like, you know, every once in a while,
panic mode. Yeah.
as a grown-up, you get grumpy and cry too sometimes, and you cry. You
How
let
many
it
times have you held the baby there crying? You're all crying like, oh God. Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, don't forget that babies have moods too.
That was great advice. That was actually really awesome advice for, you know, first time mom. Yeah. Beautiful. So Janet, how can people find you? If people would like to find our lovely Janet, where would they find you?
They can find me on Facebook under Blue Dragonfly Energy Wellness Center with an RE, which is really long. I know, it's terrible.
Well, we'll post the link. They can look. They don't have to remember.
I'm also on the web, bluedragonflyenergywellnesscenter.com. And I also have a Facebook group called the Soulful Schoolhouse. So yeah, contact me, and if you have any, I'm happy to answer parenting questions as well as, you know, questions related to what I do for a living. But yeah, if I've said anything that anybody wants, you know, more in-depth answers to, or if they have questions or anything, I'm happy to answer.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. Oh no, that was lots and lots. I feel like I want to be writing. I'm going to listen again just to write down notes. Very interesting perspective. Thank you so much, Janet.
No problem.